How's it going, everybody? Hope you all had a great new year. With Phyrexia, all will be one on the horizon. Let's dive into what decks have been doing well in these final weeks of the current Pioneer metagame. As always, be sure to check the description down below for some decks that didn't quite make this week's tier list. Let's start with the D tier. This week, we had 3 D tier decks: Mono Blue Spirits, Karuga Fires, and Abzan Greasefang. Mono Blue Spirits remains a check and balance on the format. These ghosts do a good job beating combo and ramp decks, but struggle against Rakdos Midrange and Selesnya Angels. Karuga Fires has solidified itself as the second best Fires deck in the format. Unfortunately, players have decided to focus on the better deck in 5-color Enigmatic Fires, leaving Karuga Fires underrepresented. Finally, we have Abzan Greasefang. Unlike Karuga, Abzan is the best version of Greasefang right now, but the Rat Pilot has been struggling to put up strong results of late. Next up, let's jump right to the top with the S tier. This week, there's no decks in S tier. It's been a long time since the days of Rakdos Midrange and Green Devotion holding down S tier every week. Now, we have a clump of strong decks all sitting in the A tier instead. In A tier, we have 4 powerful decks. Each of these decks are able to win premier events and demand respect from all their decks in Pioneer. We start with Lotus Field Combo. The best combo deck in Pioneer sits comfortably in the A tier with good matchups into Azorius Control, Izzet Phoenix, Rakdos Midrange, and it even has the tools to beat up Green Devotion post-board. While aggro and specific hate cards can prove problematic, the deck continues to put up strong results. Next up is Gruul Vehicles. This powerful 8-mana dork aggro deck puts powerful adventure creatures together with a Seekis Chariot and Sky Sovereign console flagship to target other midrange decks. If you're looking to beat up on other aggro decks and Rakdos midrange, few decks do the job as well as Gruul Vehicles. Next up, we have Selesnya Angels. This deck took a while to get here, but thanks to the printing of Kayla's Reconstruction, I suspect it will remain a top player in Pioneer for quite some time. Massive threats that mostly fly and an abundance of life gain makes this deck difficult to beat for any non-dedicated control deck. The addition of sideboard Pithing Needles or Phyrexian Revokers also help immensely against Green Devotion and Lotus Field Combo. Next up, we have the 2 stalwarts of Pioneer in Rakdos Midrange and Green Devotion. These 2 decks remain powerhouses that shape the Pioneer metagame, and while they aren't so far ahead of the pack as before when they were in S tier, they remain threats to win any event. Rakdos Midrange remains a consistent, good stuff deck that takes over in the mid-game and dominates with 2-for-1s. Thanks to Angels, Lotus Field, and Gruul Vehicles though, it has more difficult matchups to contend with at the top tables than before. Green Devotion remains near the top, but like Rakdos, has picked up some additional matchups that are much closer than they were before. Most decks have a solid plan against Green now, and while your explosive hands can beat anyone, it's much easier to contain this deck now than it was before, thanks to additional copies of Pithing Needle, Phyrexian Revoker, and Misery's Shadow in the metagame. Next up, we move to the B tier. These decks are consistently putting up top 8 and top 16 results, and anyone looking to play high-stakes Pioneer should know and respect these archetypes. We start with Izzet Phoenix. While this deck has been struggling of late due to the increased presence of Lotus Field and Rakdos Midrange, both bad matchups, we continue to see strong pilots winning with this deck. I'm lower on Phoenix than I have been in the past, but we've seen how fast the deck can pick up percentages whenever the metagame shifts. Next up, we have 5-color Enigmatic. This toolbox deck continues to get stronger thanks to its ability to beat Rakdos midrange and find the right answers regardless of the matchup. While it still struggles to close out aggro decks like Spirits, we're seeing those style of decks less frequently at the moment, making this a great choice to play at your local event. Last up in B tier, we have Azorius Control. While we've seen Control struggle in the past when Green Devotion and Rakdos Midrange were the top 2 decks, now that we've seen a diversifying of the top tables, Control is back with a vengeance. With good matchups into Selesnya Angels, Gruul Vehicles, and most of the C and D tier decks, Azorius has been steadily climbing the past few weeks. Finally, we have the C tier. This is the line that separates decks that have the potential to climb and become format staples, and decks that fizzle out and return to F&M tier. First up, we have Mono White Humans. We've unfortunately seen aggro as a whole start to trend downwards in Pioneer thanks to the resurgence of mid-range decks that can easily go over the top and remove aggressive threats. With Rakdos midrange range, Izzet Phoenix, Gruul Vehicles, and Selesnya Angels abound, it's hard for this once powerful aggro deck to contend in the same way it did previously. Next up, we have one of my favorite decks right now in Dimir Control. While there's been various versions, one with Days Undoing and Narset Parter of Veils, and one closer to traditional control, both have looked good in the past few weeks. Much like Azorius Control, as midrange starts to pick up and push out aggro decks, Dimir gets to customize their game plan and better target the overall metagame. I'm excited to see this deck continue to evolve over the next few weeks. Next up is Rakdos Sacrifice. This deck has been held down by Green Devotion for what felt like months. With Green starting to lose metagame share, Rakdos Sacrifice can finally start clawing its way back up the tier list. With a win in the Showcase Challenge and some strong finishes in the past few weeks, it's clear that Sacrifice is back. Finally, we have some new hotness in Mono Black midrange. This deck caught attention with some preliminary placings before a challenge top 8 by Pioneer decklist innovator Lizzie Buss on Magic Online. The next day, Hall of Famer Willie Edel took the deck to a 9th place finish in a following challenge. This deck certainly has my attention, and I suspect it will continue to see success over the next few weeks. This deck takes the best parts of Rakdos and allows you to play more value lands and invoke Despair, one of the best cards in the format. That does it for this week's Pioneer tier list. Thanks to everyone watching, and be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons if this is content that you enjoy. Until next week, thanks for watching.